model in multiple hospitals. We run the services. This is particularly relevant in these tough times of COVID, where we have to help each other and render services in multiple hospitals with a single point of agenda of having patient care in mind. The note on this load is emergency and country has decreased over 50-58%. That's what the study showed. Various reasons proposed was decreased atmosphere, work stress, people are relaxing at home, things like that. I think that is also going, and gradually we are uppeaking now. Then, contrary to that, patients come little late and land in trouble. That is other problems which you face with this. What I would briefly touch upon in the coming 10 minutes is to just briefly mention about pathogenesis and various manifestations that COVID has seen, and concentrate more on the management pathways and guidelines which are described, and show you some interesting cases and then conclude. And this is the pathogenesis of COVID infection. I won't bore you with too much of this, but basically once it enters through lung and basically it goes through endothelium, and any part which has endothelium, obviously all parts of the body could get affected. Endothelialitis and microvascular dysfunction could lead to LV dysfunction, or sometimes major vessels lead to acute coronary syndrome, acute MI. This is a standard myocardial infarction. Or sometimes it could directly attack the myocardium, lead to myocardial damage, myocarditis, and later on inflammation. As the more worse it goes, and then multi-organ failure, sepsis, all that is the basic mechanism described. What we see not only now is with now patients passing off after 2-3 months of acute COVID stage, we also see some of these post-COVID myocarditis, LV dysfunctions presenting now, which were not there in the acute stage. Those things, and the lung fibrosis also we are seeing in acute coronary care units. Not only acute critical care, also a lot of lung fibrosis patients are also getting admitted. That is it. Coming to the various, to list out the various cardiovascular manifestations, just to recapitulate, as major vessel occlusions could lead to standard acute MI, STEMIs. Microvascular obstruction could lead to STEMI mimics. Sometimes you find ECG changes in various territories, but when you do it in angiogram, they're almost like a normal coronaries, Minoka type of things. Asymptomatic troponin elevations also we have seen, which leads to precipitation of heart failures. Direct myocardial involvement, myocarditis, cardiogenic shock, these will be more poorer prognosis. Massive inflammation, immune activation, cytokine storms lead to shock-like situation again, which further secondary infections lead to multi-organ failures. We have also seen some case of pericardial involvement where the pericardial effusion and arrhythmias, atrial fibrillation. Fortunately, these little less benign ones are more common, but sometimes dangerous ones like VT-VF, sudden cardiac deaths are also described. And what we have also seen is conduction abnormalities, like producing complete heart blocks. Also, we have seen with no other reason, even in young people with COVID. Other worrisome aspects is the thromboembolic complications, which is not only DVT, but we have seen pulmonary thromboembolism cases and some young strokes also. I would show one interesting case of pulmonary thromboembolism, which we come across day before. And just to touch upon this, I thought is important. A lot of controversy was there about ACE inhibitors or receptor blockers. Now it is proven beyond doubt that is no more a problem. But when this Brigham Women's Hospital, when they tried to collect the surgical registry of 169 hospitals in Asia, Europe, America, about 8,000 plus cases, age more than 65, presence of CAD, heart failure, arrhythmia, COPD, and smoking was found to be increased risk factors, but not relation with ACE inhibitors or ARBs. And this study in New York analysis again showed usage of RAS could be safer. In some smaller subgroup analysis showed it could be beneficial. But this recent ESC 2020 conference with Heartline presentation of Brace Corona, where they randomized 659 patients, one of the fastest randomized trial done in the history, where one group was continued with ACE inhibitors or receptor blockers. About 83% were on ARBs, and about rest of them were ACE inhibitors. And what they have seen is hospital outcomes and 30-day mortality. In this trial, which had about 650 plus patients, there was no difference. So what they concluded is if the patient is on, it can be safely continued without much of problem. And there are small subgroup analysis which are being some other trials which are coming up with showing the beneficial effects. Hey, what about ECG presentations? The tachycardias are commonly seen, ectopics are seen, atrial fibrillation seen, S1 Q3 patterns are seen, apart from prolonged QTC, which sometimes was producing troubles in patients who are going on prophylaxis with chloroquine-like drugs before. And as standard acute MIs anyway, we will be seeing this is the typical S1 Q3 patterns and RBVBs, which are commonly seen in thromboembolic type of patients. Echocardiography again plays a long role in identifying when there is controversy in ECG, we use it. What is recommended is focused point of care ultrasound testing rather than detailed echocardiograms getting exposed to patients. We followed like this basically to protect our echo personnel. But what we need to assess is basically assess the RV function, right ventricle, pericardium, and valves. What we said rather than doing a detailed echo studies, which is point of care, which is relevant for patient management. I would briefly touch upon how cases are being taken now in Apollo, especially we have created a separate ID building. So once they come into the emergencies for some point of triaging, if a patient comes positive, he goes to separate ID building. If it is negative, then he comes to regular ICUs. And if it is more sicker, then he goes to more advanced ICU. Same is the case in ID. Patients are kept in each room-like thing, and if patients become sicker, then more advanced ICU facilities, 2-3 patients, ECMOs were also put on these patients. But as we understand, the more severe, sicker the patient, the more higher is the mortality in spite of whatever you're doing it. And the patient risk status, probable, suspected, negative cases, this is important because the management aspects depend upon this. Just to have it, Group A is a confirmed patient, Group B is suspected patient, C is a low risk of having the disease. So low risk, probably you could follow the same pre-existing pathways, and confirmed patient is what we need to take care. And when the suspected cases, till it gets sorted out how to handle this, we need to see. Once the patient comes into this, as I mentioned, then if there are no fever, no respirating complaints which are suggestive of COVID, if it is there, then definite COVID infection possible. He's triaged into separate building. If there's no COVID, then again he comes to a regular thing. At the point of entry itself, many hospitals have all their own technique. They put this, so the temperatures directly get recorded. Initially, they were doing personal checking for each. Now at the entry point, such thing is kept. It call comes and the temperature comes. It gets highlighted and alarms are given. So sort of testing at the entry point is there. And then once the patient comes into it, initially we had a lot of challenge our government did not allow private lab testing. But later on now, since last 2 months, it is being allowed a lot better. Before, when the testing was not allowed, only CT scan was the savior. CTs who had corads were again tried going into this. Now we do COVID PCR testing for elective cases. And for emergency, TrueNat test is done, which reports come in 3 hours. But if patients like hyperacute MIs or ACS with hemodynamic instability, then we just reel them through HRCT and then take them to cath lab. And the cath lab, we have made one into a doubtful place where reports are not ready. We do procedures in that. Other second lab, we kept it exclusively for tested and negative patients. That is this either C or B type of patients. So if a patient has documented and proven COVID, and if a patient has a large ST elevation MI, those are the ones we are try to do it, explaining everything with PPE kit. But otherwise, if patient has a smaller MI, I would cover up those details further and try to give into a lytic therapy in a small room which is specifically designed for it. If a patient is stable, again, if we can postpone it, we can always postpone in a COVID positive proven patient. And if it is basically low risk patient in a COVID positive patient, as I said, if it is small MI, inferior lateral wall without hemodynamic changes, then probably we could still consider giving fibrinolysis. This is one of the few cases where we started giving lytic therapy after the patient came to hospital in this COVID era. And probably these are to be kept in isolation wards and continue to observe for the recovery. After 10 days or so, then once the patient improved, then we were doing angiograms and further reversal. But if the patient falls into high risk categories like anterior MI, hypotension, then probably these are the more sicker patients. We tend to wear PPEs and do the procedures. I would take you through some of the case scenarios and then explain in between. And this 50-year-old female hypertensive patient comes with breathlessness, and this sort of it comes with, again, when testing is done, troponins come positive. This is a problem. Even initially, some of the cardiologists in US and India were getting exposed unknowingly, and they landed in trouble with COVID positivity. This sort of ECG changes, anyway, in earlier times, we used to reel them directly to cath lab and do it. And here the problems were dilly-dallying happened, patient settled somehow, but later she had normal coronaries with very minimal disease here, what you can call it as almost near normal coronaries or Minoka. Then another patient, this is presents very late after 4 days of chest pain, 65 years, all the typical risk factors, but because of worry of COVID, he comes late to hospital, and then probably this is the ECG, already had some QS complexes coming. Then this process of sending, getting the reports, then again patient started developing pain and ST elevations, and RWMA was there, and then X-rays taken show pulmonary edema. Then ID people say it is more of COVID. Then, but we rushed the patients further and took these patients for procedure. And once the LADs were initially was like this, and once it is revascularized, obviously patients improve. This is the post PCA pictures of the same patients, and patient improved. And later, these are the level 2 PPE care kits we were using before in April, May, but as we pass on, it's becoming more and difficult. We trained our staff also in this various techniques of donning and doffing of PPEs. Now, what we are doing now in the last 2-3 days or weeks, will cover up. Then this is very important for us, not only to protect ourselves and also the cath lab, frequent cleaning and training this cath lab staff, and then maintaining their psychology. And then second, safety lab is totally a COVID-free lab. The second lab, we try to keep it. And this sort of approach, where some people were trying robotic PCI is a long way. This is picked up from one of those US hospitals in COVID times. But what we thought is more important is wearing proper PPE masks and wearing this sort of thing. And through society, even in governmental hospitals, we try to do some donations for this, because that is the one which protects these patients. And once the revascularization done, patient gets stabilized, pulmonary mass improve, and then patient goes home very comfortably. This is another patient in 50 years in earlier our hospital. Probably in acute MI, when this comes like this, we would have done primary PCI. Because of worry of COVID, they try to maintain it with lytic therapy. But the problem, as we know, with the pharmacoinvasive strategy, sometimes is patient gets recurrence of pain, and then he was shifted here to our place. And fortunately, the HRCT was done in the other hospital. It was showing reasonably okay. We took up this patient for primary PCI. Artery was open, closed before. After it again, deep might have opened. Then after doing PCI, he improved. This is another patient where lysis was given elsewhere in outside place, and then shifted here. As we see a lot of thrombotic burden cases also in this COVID times, thrombus moving there, and then probably the LCX also had a disease. Initially, we did for LAD. Then with LCX, I have abbreviated a lot of pictures just for the sake of time. And then finally, once the arteries are open, patients stabilize and improve dramatically. That is the strength of doing PCI, and in front of patients improve in the cath lab. These are some of the guidelines which came in this COVID acute MI. This is SCI and ACC guidelines. They basically wanted us to take decisions depending upon the type of patient which it belongs. Definite STEMI, as what I have shown in the previous cases. Primary PCI with level 2 PPE is what is recommended. But if you take more time in transit because of COVID, now that lockdown is not there, but if more time is delayed, then probably pharmacoinvasive could be followed. Probable STEMI mimics observation and conservative management. Avoiding too much of staff exposure to cath lab is what is recommended. There's small MIs as STEMI mimics where LV functions are preserved. Probably you could observe them. And other thing is, when the patient is all diagnosed COVID on ventilators, suddenly develop MIs where we have a cardiogenic shock of situation, or some patients coming out of hospital cardiac arrest. There's no point being heroic, which we were trying before sometimes in cardiogenic shocks before. But if he's already having COVID plus shock and plus severe dysfunction, generally they're not making it. This is futile prognosis subgroup. Their recommended is a conservative management. And STEMI unstable angina patients now are stable, then probably this is where it is recommended to maintain with management medically for another 2 weeks or so. Where this time is going on, we are prolonging the patients, saying that it will improve, it is still happening. But if patient is stable without high risk features, probably you could postpone doing an invasive strategy. So this is a flow chart which is recommended during COVID pandemic times. What is standard recommended was within 2 hours. Now they said another 60 minutes you have to do extra delays for shifting patients. So if you are if your patient is there within a 1 hour reach normally, within 2 hours now you can do a PCI, then probably you can shift. Otherwise, do lytic therapy and then shift the patient. That's what is recommended. In the NST elevation MI, generally we tend to avoid doing procedure unless patient is having very high risk or high risk features. Intermediate and low risk, probably you stabilize them medically and follow it up later. Patient selection, where we differ PCI, managed conservative management, is what is mentioned here. STEMI patients with severe pneumonias, and obviously, probably you could consider leaving lytic therapy. Non-ST elevations, you don't do it immediately. Type 2 myocardial injuries, where there is a chance of having respiratory distress, or some of these conditions where only troponin is elevated, like myocarditis, cardiogenic shock, you could defer getting them into cath lab in all these types. Other very important thing which we need to, as professionals, need to consider is some of our very senior colleagues in the group. We tend to cover up for them, and then probably doctors, cardiologists who are more than 65 years, and some of them with chronic diseases, pulmonary, cardiac, diabetes, hypertension. Probably even the staff, not only doctors, other staff also, we could limit the exposure to them and help each other to protect our personnel. So whenever there's do's and don'ts in cardiac cath labs, what is recommended is a patient is unstable, you think, rather than intubating in the cath lab, probably you intubate them prior to getting to the cath lab, rather than trying to do it in the cath lab where the infection rates will be very high. And if possible, you try to change in the lab, one of our labs, we could successfully persist with management to get into this negative pressure systems and change the AC patterns with HEPA filters if possible. Then some of the other cases sometimes tend to get confused in this COVID scenarios. 29-year-old female postpartum presenting with breathlessness, anxiety, hyperventilation, and ECGs, incomplete RBB. Some doctors told some sort of LV dysfunction. Again, when such sort of X-ray is seen, ID people were telling it's definitely COVID, but the patient was not looking that sick. When we found out before, she had some congenital lung problem, and later on COVID test also came negative, improved and discharged. Some of the sad stories also we are seeing. 70-year-old female initially presented with unstable angina, ECG changes. This was sent in WhatsApp, and we asked her to come, but with a COVID worry, she didn't turn up. After a week, she starts developing ST elevations, and even after developing ST elevations into worrying, coming to hospital, they went back outside to one of the smaller centers, which again they referred back to Hyderabad. In this process of coming, before she reached, she succumbed with VTV probably, and sudden cardiac death, and she was brought dead to hospital. These are some of the sad stories. This is one of the few recent patient, I would say, 50-year-old male with all the risk factors. Angio was done in Apollo Indore, and this patient had a sort of tight disease. And for further management, he was brought to our place. And when he came here, the only antigen test was done there. This was ECG which was taken then. Then we thought anyway, patient is a little stabilized. We will do COVID testing and do that procedure next. He didn't have too much of pain, but when he came for the next day for the subtle changes on the ECG, and then we thought he would be infarct. If you see this angiogram, the LCX was occluded here. So then immediately, fortunately, we were mentally geared up, and with the balloon support, we could cross it easily. And there's ectatic vessels, and then probably this was the tightest lesion which got occluded. And then we wanted to see, because of ectasia, whether to cover the entire segment or cover the only tightest segment. This is what I was mentioning. When the artery is closed, when you try to do OCT, it just doesn't fill up. But in the proximal ectatic area where the blood flow was there, you could see something. Then we thought we'd dilate it and treat the proximal lesion with tight stent. Once the proximal vessel opens, then the flow improves, then you can do a OCT. Many of the times we land in trouble whether to do stenting there in the mid segment, which is could be normal segment or could be diseased. So this sort of idea we could get by doing an OCT here. If you see here this place, whether to leave it or not, we could decide by doing an OCT picture. This was a proximal stent which was put. And if you have a plaque burden like this, atherosclerosis, probably we thought we would do better by treating it. See this later generation stents, the trackability won't be a problem. It tracks easily through proximal stent going to the distal vessel, and that's the appearance after the stenting. And then it was quite good result. It looks like there is some edge problem there, but the stent ended much proximal to that. It didn't come till here. That is ectasia. We stent ended till here, and then patient we did repeated OCT after that. And then pictures showed quite well. And he also, of course, had a LAD small lesion. Then that also we stented. And patient is doing fine and is being discharged today. This is the final appearance. Patient is doing well. In this process, unfortunately, this patient could have landed in trouble, but luckily saved immediately because he was in hospital. So this sort of level 1 PP is only what we are using now. We use a double face mask, N95 mask with a surgical mask over it, and I have a face shield cover. And the entire covering with that, we find it very challenging to do procedures in that. But fortunately, we have done some procedures like this, and we are still doing healthy and doing webinar. That means what we feel is appropriate N95 mask which we're putting is most important. This another patient comes in a window period 3 hours pain, and if you see there bifurcation type of disease there. In these tough times, we try. Also, what we have noticed is prolonged procedures could also increase the risk of transmission. So we just avoid it, and unless it is absolutely essential, we avoid doing bifurcation techniques and all. Only one stent across LED was put, and the patient improved. This is another patient who came, relatively young fellow, came with unstable angina. Outside, some physician did a CT angiogram and also sent here. So there is a OM lesion. There is also very tight RCA lesion. So to avoid problems, we thought we'll just do a tightest RCA and keep the borderline lesions or on follow-up to see, because unless it is very essential, we tend to avoid doing stenting. This is another patient came in late and anterior MI in shock, and LED was occluded here. To see the flow patterns, you feel that there could be myocardial damage. With some difficulties, we could pass the wires, and then initially wires went into diagonal, then into LED. And whatever we were doing, the flow was not coming. So then this I thought I'll include because to show the thrombosection. Once we did a thrombosection there, then the flow came back. So there are some types of patients where thrombosection still works, and then we stented it, and the patient became all right. So once the flow comes, pressures improve, and patients dramatically improve. This is the last case. Another interesting before I close is a 41-year-old gentleman, works in a railway AC technician, came with some chest, leg discomfort with breathlessness. Last month ECG was like this. It's almost normal. And this time when he came, he had discomfort and loss of R-wave with T inversions. Initially, generally, we see very young patients more commonly. We were thinking whether it could be like an NST elevation MI. And but tachycardia was which was bothering. We thought whether we are missing anything. Probably if you retrospectively see carefully, we can analyze. There's also S1 Q33 pattern. But when we did echo, we were sure that it could be pulmonary thromboembolism. RA-RV dilatations and then suggestion of RV pressure increased. And if you see that pulmonary artery also carefully, you could find a thrombus there. And the tricuspid valve TR velocity was 52. So that's how we did a CT pulmonary angiogram. Thrombus was seen very well clearly here. And then just to rule out, 2 shots were also taken. Coronaries did not have much of disease as expected, very minimal LAD disease. And this patient was given tenecteplase, and later on, now is on lomalclofedeprine and tend to give rivaroxaban on follow-up. So those are interesting cases. And as we many know, a lot of these challenging times, doctors in Gandhi Hospital, one of our COVID hospitals, there was a showering with flowers. But they don't do anything else to doctors who are all suffering treating these COVID patients. But for that, anyway, thanks to governments and various our systems, a lot of doctors are running through a lot of troubles. But in these tough times, what I feel is very important is each patient should be staying at home safe and with as much minimal exposure. And we doctors, wearing this N95 mask with face shield is what's most important, with frequent sanitation, hand wash. We do see increasing number of cases, but fortunately, virulence is less common. But some of these high-risk personnel who have risk factors could become sick, and occasional patients suddenly become sick. That is what is bothering us. How to identify those we need to further see. And positive cases with acute MI, hyperacute changes, hemodynamic instability, probably PPEs are the choice. Still we do, but we should avoid exposure to cath lab unnecessarily if possible, but act if required. India and Kerala, especially saying God's own country, we should be positive and do our best to save these patients in these tough times. And not only patients, and even for our families and staff. Thank you very much for patient hearing. I just wanted to briefly mention about the DC TCT. All the videos are uploaded on the website. Anyone who wants to watch it, feel free to watch it in tctindia.in. And other platform which we started from FACSG is basically educating younger medical students and postgraduates with tough times. They're not able to go clinics. So all the super specialists, we teach the students on this FIFA platform. Thank you very much for patient hearing.
Thanks, Srinivas. I think that was a fairly wide coverage of what you're doing in COVID times. But just one question. The last few cases that you showed us, were they all COVID positive patients?
The thrombus burden case, the PTE case, all were COVID positive cases. Okay. Where was thrombus burden was there?
Okay, okay. No, I think these are very, very difficult times. And again, to all listeners, let me tell you one thing: look after yourself first, look after your staff next. I think this is the most important thing. And
Yes, sir.
whatever we say, I mean, we have been taught right from the day we joined medical school that our patients are our gods and they have to be looked after. Yes, they do. But let me tell you very, very, I mean, this is right from my heart that I'm telling you, look after yourself, look after your staff. I think nobody else cares for you or your staff. When things go wrong, it's just up to you. I mean, it's left to you. Nobody else is there to take care of you. So look after yourself and your staff. That is your primary duty.
They might
Yes.
they might cut our salaries also. Don't pay anything also if you become sick.
Yeah,
So
but
we need to
but
take care
yeah,
of ourselves.
yeah, but look after your patient after you look after yourself and your staff. This is my plea to each one of you. Nobody, I mean, when you fall sick, you're going to be alone. Just remember that. I think, Srinivasan, thank you so much. I think there's so many things that we all learned from your experience. We started off, fairly gung ho, doing just CTs and taking them to the cath lab. And really speaking, this was before the epidemic. You know, the lockdown started before the epidemic. We're a crazy country. We did this upside down. You know, when there weren't cases, we did the lockdown. And now, when almost every alternate or third case that we see now is COVID positive.
Yes.
And we've now changed our strategy completely to thrombolysis, except in very high risk. You know, somebody needs a pacemaker
Yes.
and cardiogenic shock. There's no other options. Then we take them directly to the cath lab. But we've seen so many of our Coraid 1 patients who we think, okay, this looks okay, goes for a swab and comes back positive. So just don't take this easy. It's a most unpredictable disease. The people who suddenly develop severe lung damage are the ones who you least expect. So look after yourself. Look at strategies to protect yourself and your staff. We've moved totally to thrombolysis in let's say 70-80% of our patients. Initially, we were 100% primary PCI. So I think I mean, it's not easy to say that everybody do this strategy, but look at safety as the first point and then look at everything else. Okay, if there are any other comments on this, I think we should move on. Srinivasan, if you agree.
Yeah. Please, sir. You go ahead with your NMI presentation. I should stop sharing. Huh? Did I do that?
Yeah.